So, good afternoon, good morning. First year, second year Bcom computer applications, second year Bcom computer applications, and semester 4 web technologies, uh, unit 3 JavaScript control structures. So, today's topic is control structures or control statements. It is also one of the essay type question. So, what are the essay type questions? What are the essay type questions from unit 3? That is JavaScript means explain about various data types, explain about different types of data types in JavaScript, different types of JavaScript data types in JavaScript. Second one is what are the different, explain about control structures, explain about the control structures in JavaScript. And another important essay type question is arrays, explain about arrays in JavaScript. So these are the so today essay type questions. So today we will discuss about uh, control structures or control statements in JavaScript. So what are control statements? As we know that in C and C++, control statements are structures. Control statements or control structures are mainly used to control the flow of a program, to control the flow of a program execution or a flow of a control program. So generally control structures or control statements are basically of two types. First one is the conditional statements, second one is the loops, iterations, loops or looping statements. So control statements are control structures or control statements are basically of two types. First one is the conditional statements or conditions. Conditional statements are conditions. Second one is the iterations. The iterations are loops or looping statements. So what are conditional statements? Conditions or conditional statements. So generally conditional statements or conditions are used to test a given condition, whether if the given condition is true or false, whether the given condition is true or false. So for example, if the given condition is true, then a set of statements are executed, otherwise another set of statements are executed. So based on the result of the test condition, or based on the output of the test condition, the control statements are executed, means conditional and looping statements are executed. So if the given condition is true, then the statement block A will be executed, otherwise statement block B will be executed. So what are conditional statements? So the conditional statements are if else, and if else if and switch statements. And the iteration statements are looping statements. Next type of statements are called as iteration statements or looping statements or loops. Iteration statements, looping statements or loops. So what are the loops or looping statements in JavaScript? For loop, while loop, do while loop, break and continue. For loop, while loop, do while loop, for loop, while loop, while loop, do while loop, for loop, while loop, do while loop, for loop, while loop, do while loop, break and continue. So conditional statements. So what are conditional statements? So conditional statements. So what are the conditional statements used in? What are the different types of conditional statements? What are the different types of conditional statements used in JavaScript? Very often when you write code, you want to perform different actions for different decisions, you can use conditional statements in your code to do this. So in JavaScript we have three conditional statements. First one is if statement, second one is if else statement, third one is switch statement. So what is if statement? use this statement if you want to execute a set of code when a condition is true. So generally if statement is used to execute a set of statements or a set of lines or a set of a group of statements whenever the given condition is true. If else statement, use this statement if you want to select one of two sets of code to execute. So if else statement is generally used to test or execute a set of statements if you want to select one of the two sets of code to execute. Switch statement, third statement is called as switch statement. Use this statement if you want to select one of many sets of code to execute. So switch statement is generally used to execute to execute one of the and to select when execute and select and execute one of the many sets of code to execute. So the syntax is like that. So syntax is, if simple example is, if my variable is equals to 2, then my variable is equals to what, something else. So switch statement, what is switch statement? If there exist multiple conditions, the switch statement is recommended. Means if you want to test multiple values or multi values, then the switch statement is recommended. Means based on the value of the variable, or based on the value of the given expression, or based on the given constant, this is used, because one expression gets so the syntax is switch. Within brackets my variable, syntax is switch. The syntax is switch. The syntax is switch within brackets some variable, bracket over close. Case 1 means some set of statements are executed. Case some to false or simple or something. Default statement is generally used if none of the above. If default statements are executed, if none of the above statements or cases are matched, So generally switch statement is used to test for a multi-valued or multiple values. Switch statement is generally used to test for a multi-valued variable or multi-valued conditions. So based on the given variable or based on the given expression. Loop statements, loops or looping statements. So what is a loop? What is the definition of a loop? Means a set of commands or statements that executes repeatedly until a specified condition is met. So what is a loop or looping statements? A loop is a set of statements or commands that are executed repeatedly until a specified condition is met. So what is a loop or looping statement? A loop is a set of commands. Or a set of statements that executes repeatedly until a specified condition is met. JavaScript supports two loop statements, for and while loop. JavaScript supports two loop or looping statements. First one is for loop and second one is while loop. In addition, we can use the break and continue statements within the loop statement. So another statement, for, in execute statements repeatedly but is used for object manipulation. So loop statements, there are three types of loops or looping statements are available in JavaScript. First one is a while loop, second one is do while loop, third one is for loop. So fourth one is for each loop. So first of all we start with some for statement. So what is the for statement or for loop? So a for loop repeats until a specified condition evaluates to false. So what is the for loop? For loop is generally use it to execute or repeats a set of statements or a group of statements until a specified condition evaluates to false. Means the for loop will be executed. The for loop will be executed. The for loop will be executed until the given condition becomes false. Means the for loop will be executed till the condition is true, and whenever the condition becomes false, it will come out of the loop. The JavaScript for loop is similar to Java and C loops. So the for loop for statement, the first statement in JavaScript is almost same as C or C and C++. So the syntax is like that. For the syntax of for loop is for generally the first statement or a for loop have three parts or components. First one is initiation or initial expression or initiation. Second one is called as condition. Third one is increment or decrement part. So the for loop have three parts or components. First one is initialization, second part is called as condition, third part is increment decrement part. So in the initialization part we have to initialize the index variable or looping variable. The index variable or the looping variable with some value. It is called as initialization or initialization part. Second part is called as a conditional part. Second part is called as a condition or a conditional part. In the condition or a conditional part, we may check the value of the given condition. We may check the value of the given condition, whether if it is true or false. If it is true, the loop will be executed. If the value is true, the loop will be executed, and if the condition is false, the loop will be terminated. Third part is called as increment decrement expression part. Third part is called as increment and decrement
ఇంటర్నెట్ బ్యాంకింగ్ కదా క్రెడిట్ కార్డుతో కడతారా?
నేను చేయాలి, నువ్వు కదా. ఎలా చేస్తాను
తెలుసు, నేను ఆల్రెడీ చేశాను.
కాదు. సో first statement have three components. First part is called as initialization part. First part is called as initialization part, and second part is called as testing part, and third part is called as increment and decrement part. Increment and decrement part. So in the initialization part, first we may initialize some variable with index variable or looping variable with some value, and in the conditional part we may test the given condition. The conditional part we may test the given condition, and in the increment and decrement part we may increment or decrement the looping variable. So these are the three parts or three components of a for loop. So when a for loop executes, the following sequence of operations occurs. So whenever you execute a for loop, the following statements are executed. The initial expression if any is executed. This expression usually initializes one or more loop counters, but the syntax allows an expression of any degree of complexity. So, first of all, the initialization part is executed. First of all, the initialization part is executed. Second part is the conditional part. The condition expression is evaluated. The condition expression is evaluated if the value of condition is true. If the if the, if the value of the condition is true, the loop statements are executed. The loop statements are executed. So, if the value of the condition is true, the loop will be, or the loop statements are executed. If the value of the condition is false, the loop state terminates. The loop will be automatically terminates. Number 3, the update expression, increment expression. So, in the third part, the value of looping variable or value of the index variable will be updated, means the value of looping variable will be incremented or decremented. Fourth point, the statements get executed and control returns to step 2. Actually, the syntax provides for a single statement and enclosed in braces. Any number of statements are treated as a single statement. So, next in the next step, all the statements are executed one by one. After that, the control will be goes back to the looping statement, and again the condition will be tested. And if the condition is true, given condition is true, again the loop will be executed. Else, if the condition is false, the statements are terminated. The loop will be terminated. The following function contains a for loop that counts the number of selected options in a scrolling list. So, this is the simple example of using a for loop. So, this is a simple example of simple HTML code or a JavaScript code. This is the simple example program of using JavaScript code or using JavaScript code. So, HTML head title /title script. So, how to write a JavaScript code in HTML? How to write a JavaScript code in HTML? By using script language, script tag. So, how to write JavaScript in HTML page? By using script tag. So, syntax is very simple: script. So, syntax is script language is equals to within quotes JavaScript. Script language is equals to within quotes JavaScript, and function how many select object. So, this is the code of JavaScript code, simply using for loop. So, after that /head body tag will be opened, and form tag will be opened, and some form will is there. So, input type is equals to button, value is equals to something, on click is equals to within quotes alert some message. So, next another type of statement is called as while statement or while loop. Another statement is called as a while loop. So, what is a while loop? While loop is nothing but it is also one of the loop. In the while loop, first the statements are first the given condition is tested. In the while loop also, first the given condition is tested, whether if it is true or false, and if it is true, the given condition is, if the given condition is true, then the statements are executed. So, the while statement defines a loop that iterates as long as the condition remains true. In the following example, so for in loop is mainly used. It is also one of the for loop used with objects or arrays. So, break statement. So, there are two types of special control statements are used: break and continue. Break statement. What is the break statement? Break statement is simply used to So there are two special control statements are used. There are two special control statements are used. First one is break statement and continue statement. So break statement is simply used to come out of a looping statement. Break statement is simply used to come out of a loop without any condition. The continue statement is also used to continue or ignore all the statements after the word continue. So while using continue statement, all the statements or all the keywords or all the statements commands may simply ignored after the word continue. So these are the two special statements. So break and continue are special statements or special control statements generally used with any type of controls, any type of loops or looping statements. So these are the examples for using break and continue. So object based programming, so functions, another important concept in JavaScript is functions. So what are functions? Functions are also same as in like in JavaScript, C and C++. So functions are mainly used to, why we require functions means functions are mainly used to execute a set of statements or a group of statements for many number of times. So every function have a unique function name, every function have a unique name, and generally functions may return some values to the main function, whereas some functions may not return any values. Similarly, functions have parameters. Some functions may have parameters or arguments passed, and some functions may not have any arguments or parameters. So what are the main use or what are the main purpose of using functions means generally functions we may call and execute functions for a many number of times. So generally functions can be called and executed many number of times. So every function have a unique name, and functions may generally have some parameters or arguments in it, or arguments to be passed. So calling a function. So how to call a function? Generally calling a function in JavaScript. To call any function in JavaScript, we may simply use its name or a function name. So to call any function in JavaScript, we may simply use its name, and with any parameters or arguments have. Means generally some functions have some arguments, and many functions have not having any arguments. Next, what are arguments or parameters? So what are arguments or parameters means arguments and parameters are some variables. What are arguments and parameters? Arguments and parameters are also called as sub variables passed to a function. And these arguments have some types, and if more than one argument is used, they can be separated with a comma. If more than one argument is used, they can be separated with a comma operators. So this is a simple program using HTML program or HTML and JavaScript program. This is a simple HTML and JavaScript program to using some functions. We may continue in the next class.